Hi everyone, welcome to another video. In this video, we are going to solve the question of designing Twitter. In this problem, we have to design a simplified version of Twitter where users can post tweets, follow and follow other users, and are able to see 10 most recent tweets in the user's newsfeed. This is a really straightforward question. In our previous video, we solved the question of LRU cache, where we had our cache sorted based on recently used items in descending order. So you might be wondering, why is this question important? So this question teaches us sorting the tweets based on timestamps using a priority queue. So this get news feed function here that we have to implement, that's the most important bit, and remaining three functions here, they are pretty much straightforward. So let's think about this problem and how we can solve this. So first, let's start by thinking about how to implement post tweet, follow and unfollow functions. To implement these functions, first we have to think where is the data for all the tweets, followers and followees is being stored. The simplest data structure that we can use to store information about tweets and followers and followees is a simple hash map. So what we can do is we can create two hash maps. The first hash map is going to map user ID to the list of tweets, and second hash map is going to map user ID to a list of all the followees. So the keys are mapping to a list of tweets and followees. So in place of a list, we can simply use a hash set because it's going to be unique. So you can simply have a map where integer is mapping to a set of integers, and we are going to have two maps. So the first map I can call, let's say, tweets, and second map I can call followees. So using these two hash maps, I can easily implement these three functions: post tweet, follow and unfollow. So the most important function that we have to implement is the get news feed function, and think how we can implement it, because in this function we have to retrieve the 10 most recent tweet IDs in the user's news feed. So what this means is, if a user, let's say with user ID 1, is following users with IDs 2, 5 and 10, and user with ID 2 has, let's say, 4 tweets, user with ID 5 has 3 tweets, and user with ID 1 has 1 tweet, and user with ID 1 themselves have, let's say, 10 tweets. So what we want to show in the user 1's newsfeed is 10 most recent tweets. What this means is a tweet is going to have two fields. One is the ID itself, and another thing it's going to have is the time at which the tweet was posted. So using this time, we have to sort these tweets and show it in the user's newsfeed. If we store tweets in a hash set, then these tweets are not going to have any ordering, and these can be randomly ordered, and we don't get any ordering of the tweets based on timestamps. So instead of set, if we use a list, and as the user is posting new tweets in real time, what we can do is we can add that new tweet at index 0 of this list, and in this way we can have the most recent tweets at index 0, and we are going to have the oldest tweet at the end of the list. So using a list instead of a set for storing the tweets is going to be one optimization that we can use to sort the tweets based on timestamps. Let's say get news feed call comes for the user ID 1, and user ID is following users with IDs 2, 3 and 4, and these users, the user with ID 1 has 5 tweets, user with ID 2 has 15 tweets, and 3 has 2 tweets, and user ID with 4 has 1 tweet. So what we have to do is we have to iterate over the tweets of the followees and also go over the tweets of the user ID itself. And since we have to retrieve only 10 most recent tweets, so as we are iterating over a particular followee, we can only go over first 10 tweets, since these are sorted in descending order on timestamp. So for example, the user with ID 2 has 15 tweets, so we don't want to go over last 5 tweets. We can simply go over first 10 tweets of user with ID 2, and as we are iterating over these tweets, we can store them in a min heap. And once the min heap size exceeds 10, what we can do is we can do a poll call for that min heap, and it is going to evict the tweet with the least timestamp. And this way, at the end of our iteration, like once we have iterated over all the tweets, we are going to have 10 most recent tweets, and we can simply return those 10 tweets and we would be done. Now let's dive into the code implementation and try to write the code for this problem. So we can start by writing our tweet class and define the fields ID and time for a tweet. So we can write int ID, int time, and define a constructor. This dot ID equal to ID, this dot time equal to time, and inside our Twitter class we can define our two hash maps. The first hash map is going to map the user ID to their tweets, to the list of tweets. So it's going to be list of tweet, and I can call it tweets. And the second hash map is going to map the user ID to all the followees. So it's going to be set integer followees, and I can create a global variable timestamp so that anytime I'm creating a new tweet, I can simply increment this timestamp variable and assign the tweet time to it. And this way we can make use of this global variable to assign time to our tweets and then sort our tweets. And inside our constructor we can initialize both the hash maps. New hash map integer list tweet, and I can initialize second hash map integer and set of integer. And next what we can do is we can write our post tweet function. So inside our post tweet function, what we have to check first is if this user ID does not have any existing tweets. So for that we can check tweets dot contains key user ID. If this user ID does not have any tweets, then this user ID will not have any mapping in this hash map, and this would be true. And in that case we can create a fresh entry for that user ID and then initialize the array list tweet. And after this we can create our new tweet, and this is going to be tweet ID and timestamp plus plus. And next I can add it to our hash map. It's going to be map.get user ID dot add index 0 tweet. So adding it at index 0 is going to add the most recent tweet for this user ID to our array list. And next let's implement our follow function. So a particular user cannot follow itself. So the first check we can do is if follower ID is equal to followee ID, then we can simply return. And if this follower ID does not have any followees currently, so what it means is it's not going to have any entry in the followees hash map. So first we can check if it does not have any entry, follower ID, and now we can do followees dot put follower ID and initialize new hash set. So it could happen that a particular follower ID is not following anyone and still have the entry in the hash map, and this is only the first time, like first ever time a particular follower ID is going to follow a followee ID, that this if block is going to work. And next I can do is followees dot get follower ID dot add followee ID, and this way we will have added this followee ID to this hash set. And in our unfollow function, what we can do is we can simply just check if followees dot contains key. So if it only if it contains the key follower ID, then what we can do is we can remove it from our hash map, from our hash set. So get follower ID dot remove followee ID. So it's going to retrieve the hash set and then it's going to simply remove it. And it could happen that it's not present in the hash set, then it's simply going to do nothing and just return. So we have implemented our post, tweet, follow, and unfollow functions. We can check for mistakes later when we run the code. So now let's focus on our get newsfeed function. Initially, we can start by creating our priority queue. So this priority queue is going to have tweets, and I can call it min heap new priority queue. And inside it, it's going to have a comparator where we are going to compare a tweet, and inside of this we are going to have compare function, public int compare tweet t1 tweet t2 and return t1.time minus t2.time. So what this means, it's going to take the tweet with a smaller timestamp and it's going to make a min heap. Next, we can define our final variable list integer newsfeed to new array list, and at the end we can simply return newsfeed. I can create another array list for the user IDs, and for those user IDs we are going to iterate over the tweets of these user IDs. So new array list, and the first user ID we can add is user IDs dot add is simply the user ID itself, and other user IDs are going to be all the followees of this user ID. So I'm going to check if followees dot contains key user ID. Only if it contains the key user ID, then I can do add all, and then followees dot get user ID. So this way I have all the user IDs, and now I have to iterate over all the tweets for these user IDs. So next I'm going to need a for each loop for each of these user IDs. So I can create integer ID user IDs, and next I have to iterate over all the tweets for every ID. So for that I have to check if tweets dot contains key ID, then it's going to give me list of tweets dot get ID. Yeah, it's going to give me list of tweets, and I have all the list of tweets, and I have to iterate over only first 10 tweets. So I can write int I equal to 0, I less than maths.min tweets.size comma 10, and I plus plus. And now what's going to happen is, so this is going to be min heap dot add tweets dot get I, because we are adding the tweet object to our min heap. And next we can do is check the size of the heap. If min heap dot size gets greater than 10, then we can simply do a poll call. So this way we would have 10 most recent tweets in our min heap. And next what we can do is we can export these tweets from min heap to our newsfeed. So we can have a while loop, and we can check while min heap is empty till it's not empty, then we can add it to our newsfeed. So it's going to be newsfeed dot add, and we are adding it at index 0. So it's going to be min heap dot poll dot id. So adding it at index 0 keeps the most recent tweet at index 0, and this way we would have our newsfeed. So let's try to run it and check if we did any silly mistakes. Okay, there is an error on line 22. So this should be tweets, not map. And here we use the correct name for the map. So let's try to run it again. Another error, same error. It's going to be tweets again. Okay, another error, line 50. It says tweets.get ID. So what are we doing here? Oh, it should not be. So it's the same variable name. So this should be user tweets instead. So we have to use a different variable name here. It says user tweets. I think this looks good now. So let's try to run it again. And yeah, that got accepted. And let's try to submit it. And yeah, that works, which is great. So I hope this made sense. So if you have any doubts, let me know in the comments and I'll reply to you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.